Hello and welcome to another Tune Into Tourism webinar looking at travel trends for 2021. So far in this series we've looked at reopening, reunion travel, responsible tourism, and if you missed any of those, check out the Tune Into Tourism Road to Recovery playlist on our YouTube channel. If you just have a wee look on the bottom of the screen there, that'll take you there, youtube.com/HIE Communications. But today it's the turn of rural and community tourism. It's certainly not new, but it's set to be a major trend this year as people who've been cooped up in urban environments for the last year long for the escape and freedom a holiday in a rural community promises. Obviously, the Highlands and Islands is extremely well placed for this and is already doing a fantastic job of catering to this market. But today we're looking at how things have changed post-COVID and how to tackle the new challenges we face in the coming season and beyond. I'm joined by two inspiring guests. First of all, we have Joan Bishop, the chair of the Dornoch Area Community Interest Group. Thanks for joining us, Joan. As we prepare for an increase in domestic guests this season, thanks to COVID, that creates some real challenges, doesn't it?
Well, it does. I mean, first of all, we welcome tourism. We've had a very quiet time and we'll be delighted to welcome them back. But it's really managing them. We had a lot of motorhomes last year, and it's encouraging people to park in the right places and to take their litter with them or do some extra litter picking ourselves to make sure we keep a clean and welcoming environment for everybody.
Lots of things to think about and to talk about today. We've also got Peter Syme, adventure specialist, strategic advisor, and much more. Peter, what do you see as the main challenges for tourism businesses this season?
It's all to do with the guest. Who is the guest? Where are the guests coming from? What's the guest expecting? And making sure your experiences and your products and your services are aligned with the guests. The challenge there is the guests you may be getting may not be the guests you got in 2019 and previous to that. So it can be a bigger challenge for businesses, making sure the business is aligned with the guests that are actually going to be visiting this season.
Joan, can I start with you firstly? The group, the Dornoch Area Community Interest Group, was formed. Tell us about the impact that it's had on tourism in Dornoch. Okay,
well, it was actually formed way back in 2007. And that followed on from an earlier organisation that had set up visitdornoch.com in the year 2000. So we had already been working with businesses. And then Highlands and Islands Enterprise commissioned the Dornoch Economic Master Plan, which is a 10-year plan from 2013 to 2023, for us to kind of up our tourism game, get better branding and awareness, and be a quality destination that would attract more people. And DACHIC, which is a shortened name for our mouthful of an organisation, DACHIC was assigned as the lead on a number of these projects. So signage was an obvious thing when we first started. If you followed the signs, you got to a car park and you knew where the toilets were, and that was it. Didn't even tell you where tourist information was. So we put up a number of finger posts with signs. We've got You Are Here maps. We've got printed maps. So that was one of our challenges, just getting people to kind of move around the town. But really, it's working with all the businesses that has allowed us and them not to see each other as competition, but see us all as part of the bigger company of Visit Dornoch.
Mm-hmm. And that relationship and that collaboration has become more important than ever in post-COVID. Collaboration is the word that we keep hearing over and over again. How has the group evolved to respond to this crisis and help get businesses back on that road to recovery?
Okay, so when lockdown occurred last March, we set up a WhatsApp group so that we could more quickly get in touch with everybody. We had Zoom meetings, of course. And with every bit of every announcement that came, we flagged that up on our websites. I think we've put up 222 posts in the year, whereas in a normal year we probably put up one a month. So keeping people up to speed on what was happening was important, and also working with them. So there was some concern when all the cleaning protocols came out. So we managed to get some training. We did a bulk order for the disinfectants, the antiviral sprays, and so on, and just tried to address people's concerns. And the group itself has helped one another. So in the autumn, when we had to go back to al fresco dining and it was a bit cold, then the WhatsApp group, immediately people were offering patio heaters and so on. So we just very much worked in self-help and working together as a big kind of family, if you like.
Yes, you can really see how having that community group would really help bring people together and tackle a problem that's so much bigger than any individual business would have had to face in the past. Peter, if I can come to you, it makes sense that people want to escape to rural areas, but it does create new challenges. What new issues, apart from the camper vans, obviously, that we talked about, the litter issues, what new issues does it raise for businesses? You talked there about knowing the customer better, perhaps.
Yeah, the situation we're in is the tourism industry in Scotland, much like the tourism industry in lots of countries around the world, tends to be very, very inward focused and looking on its own issues. Whereas the opportunities and threats are not within tourism, they come from society at large. So you have to look outside tourism to see how you're going to structure your industry to address the challenges. Now, the world we're in has presented two types of change. We have structural change happening at the moment that is both a massive threat and a huge opportunity for tourism. So examples of that are we've now got a huge amount of the population working from home or working from anywhere. Now, that isn't going to change. That is a trend. All the data is showing that is a trend that's going to increase. We're not talking small numbers here. We're talking millions and millions of people can work from home or work from anywhere. That is a unique opportunity for Scottish tourism if it gets its head around it. So all that commuting is going to be reduced. You've got the city centre commercial real estate that's not going to be as in demand as it was. So that's a structural change. Business travel is going to melt down and it's not going to bounce back to the size it was again either. That's a structural change. All of that presents opportunities for Scottish tourism. The biggest change here is demographics. The biggest weakness in Scottish Highland rural tourism has been people born in the region leave. They ended up going to cities, they went to university and they disappeared and they never came back and worked in the industry. Now we have a situation appearing where if we get our infrastructure correct, you're going to be able to attract people to stay in Highland regions, stay in rural areas, and also attract new people in because they can work from home with the employer being elsewhere. So there's huge opportunity there around the society before you even start addressing the tourism issues. Now, obviously, we have a season about to start that is going to be driven internally rather than externally. The international visitors are going to be in the minority. There's going to be a huge influx of visitors locally. And the hard, uncomfortable truth is Scotland is not structured from an infrastructure point of view to experience what it's about to experience. It's not going to be nice. We're going to have far too many people visiting an area that's not got the infrastructure to cope with it. So what do businesses have to do? They have to go above and beyond of just looking after the customer when the customer is with them. So my business looks after customers when they're with us. And historically, we didn't really think about when the customer wasn't with us. But we're going to have to think about when the customer isn't with us, because if the customer can't get parking, can't get to you, there's traffic jams, all of that stuff is going to impact on your business, and it's certainly going to impact on the customer experience. You can't fix the infrastructure in one season for what we're about to experience. So it'll fall on all businesses to try and manage what can be or will be quite a negative customer experience, because we're just not scaled from an infrastructure point of view for what we're about to experience.
Mm-hmm. And Joan, how have you gone about tackling some of those issues around infrastructure and about that sort of customer experience up in Dornoch?
Well, we've worked over the winter on a visitor management plan, and we certainly have got some overflow parking down at the beach, and encouraging camper vans to park there where there's kind of deeper areas to park. We're also still hopeful that we might get a new car park. Daychick has bought Dornoch South, which was the old abattoir site, and we have planning permission for a vehicle park, and we're just waiting for the kind of last two pieces in our funding package. And if we were to get that, then we would have that certainly for a bit later in the season. But that would allow us to get coaches and motorhomes and cars off the square, or just provide extra facilities altogether. So keep our fingers crossed on that one.
Well, you talked about funding there. There are some funds available. I think I've got a slide. The first one there. This is one of the funds that's been made available to help with this very problem. The Better Places Green Recovery Fund, which was launched, round one was launched in December, to help communities and destinations develop plans for proactive visitor management in nature hotspot locations across Scotland. The round 2 is now open for applications to help ensure services and infrastructure are in place to manage visitor numbers. And in this round, there is funding available for local authorities as well as community groups and NGOs. You can see the details on screen just now there for how to get in touch, and definitely something worth doing. I know, Joan, that's something that you've done, hasn't it? You applied in round 1. Mm-hmm.
That's one of the ones that we're waiting to hear from. Now, they were due to announce today, but they've been oversubscribed, so it'll be next week before we know. But I hope we'll be fortunate on that one.
Yeah, unsurprising there. And I believe there's another round 4 actually of the Rural Tourism Infrastructure Fund, which is supporting the delivery of many of the infrastructure needs identified by the task force, which is to realise a more strategic network of facilities which will meet the needs of visitors for years to come, and drive Scotland's rural areas to become world-class destinations with the ability to meet future expectations of visitors. You can see again the details on the screen there. If you go to visitscotland.org, there's much more information, but the deadline for that is the 19th of May for an expression of interest, so definitely worth having a look into if you haven't already, as I imagine a lot of people will have done. Joan, in terms of that infrastructure, that's a major part of it, and looking at how to manage just the extra volume of people and the challenges those provide is one side of things. But on the other side, we're looking at actually the experience of the customer and how they're engaging with businesses, and that's changed as well, hasn't it?
Yes, and I think we found last year that people were more reluctant to go inside, and certainly the kind of al fresco eating was very successful. People felt safer being outside. But having said that, for the few months that we did operate last year, the shops and the cafes, did very well, and we're hoping to do that again. But for the likes of the cafes, they're making sure that they've got the windows open and so on, so you've got that ventilation, and people feel confident in going in.
Mm-hmm. And contactless has become a big part of the customer experience as well. Peter, what have been the major changes you've made within your business, and can you tell us exactly what you do?
The Scottish business we do is an outdoor adventure business. We take people down rivers and canyons, up mountains, climbing, abseiling, rafting, kayaking, anything to do with the outdoors. So the changes that we experienced last year for the customers when we got open for 3.5 months, 4 months, whatever it was much more last minute booking for obvious reasons. People don't want to commit ahead, so it's very last minute driven, which gives you a whole host of operational issues when people are booking sometimes an hour, 2 hours before the time. Previously, our average booking window was 30 odd days. During August last year, it was down to within 24 hours. So that drives operational issues. All customers live in a digital world now. It's digital first. They live on their mobile phone. So the digital touch points of how the customer interacts with your business is a challenge when it's short notice bookings. It's a challenge all the time, and it's getting more of a challenge. We've had 10 years worth of digital growth in less than a year. So anybody who's not got the business structured and able to communicate with their customer base and their guest base in a digital manner are going to miss out on potentially a lot of business because of the digital nature of customers interacting with their phones above everything. It's not my opinion. That's all data. All the data is available globally on how customers are now reacting to situations. Management of people when they're with you can be a challenge, because not everybody has the same opinion of the situation that we're in. So when you're dealing with a throughput of a lot of people, everyone has different views on the current situation. And we obviously all have regulations and rules that we have to abide to. So communication with guests face-to-face can be quite challenging, because some guests just don't agree with the situation as it is. So that can be a challenge for many businesses.
There is an awful lot to talk about, and as you say, those booking windows create a real challenge for businesses. We were talking in the first webinar when we were talking about reopening, we spoke to Irene Roberts at Expedia, and she said that was a trend they were seeing really across all the businesses. It was that very last minute people were booking, or very far in advance, and that does seem to be borne out across the sectors. So what can businesses do then? What can tourism businesses in rural areas do just now? What should they be doing and focusing on? Is it focusing on ensuring that digital experience for the customer is there, their websites, they're mobile friendly?
Yeah, you've got to take your lead for the customer at all times. It's sorry irrelevant what you want to do. It's what is the customer doing, and the customer lives in a digital world now. Many of the customers are of an age now that they have only lived in a digital world. Us oldies have kind of seen it both ways, but many of the customers today have only lived in a digital world. So unless you're being in contact with these customers at every stage of the customer journey, and before the customer turns up to you, they go through many stages of customer journey. They go through a dreaming phase about what they're going to do, what should they do. They go through a planning phase where they do lots of research on what they're going to do. Then they get to the point of the booking. Then they actually come and visit you and get the experience that you're providing. And then they have the sharing phase after it. All of them, a business has to have a digital input into, because if you don't, you've got a weakness in your business. And if you don't get the first two stages, you're not going to get the bookings that your business should be getting. Maybe got in the past, won't get in the future because the customers and other businesses done it better than you and they end up going elsewhere. So you have to create your whole infrastructure around every single touch point of a customer's journey digitally. You have to be involved in a positive manner to help that customer.
Mm-hmm. And Joan, you talked about some of the practical elements of working together as a community to tackle some of the practical challenges of having more guests there. But what about that digital aspect? I know that you have developed a new website and an app actually as well.
Yes, we certainly, as a business group, basically, they contribute financially to the Visit Dornoch project, and we have 4 part-time employees. So we have Lucy Williams is on digital marketing. So she has focused her time in making sure that we're getting the message out there that, while we're in lockdown, that Dornoch is waiting for you. Dream about your holidays in Dornoch. Book ahead. It will all come again. And I think particularly for self-catering, I think people are keen to have their own environment. That those bookings are really very good for this year for smaller properties. Clearly, there's a challenge at the moment because households can't mix. So the bigger properties really do struggle. And in Dornoch, you'll know that golf is very popular. And often we get groups, particularly of guys coming up who would maybe, 6 of them would share a house, and you just can't do that now. So, that has changed things. But yes, get back to the digital side of things. So we've decided this year we're just about to relaunch our website and have a new app, because we feel that's the way to speak to people. We're also going to have the digital notice board outside our new visitor centre so that 24/7 people can get that information. They don't actually have to speak to a person if they don't want to, but we will be open to do that face-to-face chat for those people that want to. I think that's very much part of what people certainly used to like about their experiences, to speak to locals and find out about their way of life and kind of immerse themselves in our local community.
Well, that's the very key point, Joan, and that's part of this trend, is that desire for people to really get under the skin of a place, to get to know it, to get to know what life is like there and get to know the locals. So it's a real challenge to be able to do that both in person and digitally. How difficult was it to develop that app, and what sort of things are on there?
Well, we've had an app since 2015, I think. So this is just a revisit of that. So we've got things like walks. So you've got your GPS on, you've got a route, and you can follow it, not get lost, basically. And it's got information about the shops and the eateries and so on. And when you find one, you press a button, and that's you actually calling them. So it's just making that whole step between looking at something and going to the next step of engaging or booking that much easier. And on our website, we've got a lot more videos than we had before. So again, people, particularly when they couldn't come, can still see what the pipe band looks and sounds like, and what our Highland games would be like, even if we can't have it this year, so that they're getting a feel for our kind of cultural and heritage before they come.
Mm-hmm. And really inspiring people, especially in the last year when they've not been able to travel. So what kind of content have people been particularly engaged with?
Well, photographs of our beach anytime, and a photograph of a dog on the beach, that's just fantastic. And we actually had a photography competition last autumn and winter as part of our marketing plan there. And we had over 200 entries, and the winner was a dog on the beach. And that just, I think it just seems to sum up why people come. It's for that, the wide open spaces, the fresh air, the freedom, if you like, and the space.
Mm-hmm. And Peter, what other actions can, obviously, Joan, they're doing a great job there in Dornoch of really selling the place and selling that rural experience, that escape, and also being very connected into the people that live there, which is so important. What other things can businesses do to kind of improve that, how they sell that to guests?
Yeah, we've all experienced it here in a business-to-business environment, that we're all on Zoom calls, we're all talking to each other. Some businesses have took that to B2C and took it direct to the consumer. So food tour businesses are having tastings online and then sending packages by e-commerce to the customer at home. Whiskey tour, gin tasting. Lots of businesses are engaging with the consumer in the way that we're engaging with now, backed up by e-commerce that they weren't doing before. So they've actually created a new business within their business. And that's an opportunity that many of the businesses are missing. We've got new customers coming this season. If you do a good job, we will retain a percentage of these new customers. When international comes back, and it will come back eventually, you're then going to have a better customer mix and a more balanced customer mix, because you'll have more access to local, because you've been doing it for the last 2 years, and an international over the top. But you will only retain it if you keep engaging with them when they're not with you. At the end of the day, tourism businesses tend to only see customers once a year or twice a year at the maximum. How do you keep in touch with that customer on a regular basis? The days of sending an email every 4 months or 3 months or 1 month, that's not enough. Again, most of them won't read the email, go into the spam box, whatever. You have to find ways to engage with your customer on a more regular basis. And if the customer isn't with you, that means digitally.
And Joan, I saw you nodding there as Peter was speaking. Is that something that you have definitely found yourselves doing in the last sort of year or so?
Yes, and I think we're getting a lot of engagement. We're not just putting up a post of the beach, but people are saying, I can't wait to come back. I was there and did a year. My auntie lives there. Just lots of people wanting to tell us their story and how they're longing to get back. And I think that's really important. And we're very fortunate in Dornoch that we have a lot of repeat business. And what we found last year is we did, as Peter was saying, we had different people coming, folks that perhaps would have gone abroad for their holiday before, and now come up and like it and are coming back again. And the other thing was trying to get all year round business. And particularly, as you were saying, Peter, we're trying to engage our young people in having a career in tourism. It's got to be all year round, otherwise it's not a career. And that's something we've been working on since 2013 to extend our season. And I think if there's a silver lining at all to come out of this pandemic, it will be that people can see that they can come to Scotland any time of the year, and you're as likely to get a good day in November as May. So, weather should not be the objection that some people, have felt it to be. And I think that would be great.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think making those connections, making new connections with visitors that perhaps wouldn't have considered rural destinations in Scotland before, but now are able to do that. And also the fact that we're much more used to using digital to get to know a place and to see what it has to offer. It really is a massive opportunity, Joan, isn't it, to, as you say, extend that season and create new loyal customers that will keep coming back in years to come.
Absolutely. And, so people who maybe would come for a week in the summer, they were so desperate to get away last winter, they came for a few days. And I think then just to see that actually a weekend break just, gives you a lift. And to do that locally, and to think about it until a few days before you get in your car and you go. And I think, we can build on that.
Mm-hmm. And Peter, if I can come to you now, we talked about the customer's experience. How can we manage their expectations? A lot of these guests perhaps would have gone abroad to very different locations to have very different experiences. And of course, with COVID, there are some restrictions that will change what they're able to do and how they travel. How can we manage those expectations ahead of their trip?
Yeah, I think everyone in tourism needs to understand where we are in economic cycles. The world has moved into an experience economy. So you have 5 economies in the world. You have commodities, you have products, you have services, you have experiences, and you have transformational experiences. The further down that train you are, the more resilient your business is. So if you're delivering experiences that engage with customers on an emotional level, you will retain them customers longer, better, be able to charge a higher fee and get a higher margin. If your products and services are more at the commodity product service level, there's nothing wrong with that. It's a volume game. Because the world has digitalized, if you're selling commodities, products, or a service, the price is under pressure, your margin's under pressure, and it ends up being, I need to sell 1,000 more, 10,000 more, 100,000 more to keep the business alive. So everything you're designing from a product point of view, you want it to be an experience that connects with the customer on an emotional level and delivers a great experience. And in some cases, a transformational experience if you're engaging with the customer over a longer period of time. Now, you have to take into the situation we're in, the landscape you've got, the environment you've got. What can you design that aligns with who these customers are? But you can only design it if you know who the customers are. Now, the reality is there's a lot of businesses going to get a lot of business this summer from local people from all over England, from all over Scotland, just because of the situation. But they haven't actually designed the products and their services and their experiences for this customer. So you can have a misalignment, and it's difficult. This stuff's not easy. You need to really understand who your customer is, so you create the correct experience at every touch point with that customer to satisfy them. And particularly for this season, think about the customer's journey when they're not with you. And how can you help them find that parking space? How can you help them find that accommodation that's suitable for what they're doing? How can you find that food solution for them that is suitable for them? Just because it's not your business, we're all going to have to step up to help their whole journey.
And what about in terms of product development of your own offering? What examples can you give, sort of practical things that businesses should be doing, should be thinking about to really cater to that market better?
Yeah, if I give an example in my own business last summer, historically we're group driven. So our average group would be a dozen, 20, 30, and then big groups at 80, 100, 150. Obviously, we couldn't do that last year, just couldn't get them. So our business didn't just change from not having international guests, which normally make up about 30% of your Scottish business, and groups make up the rest. We had no international guests and we had no groups. So we had to change our whole product mix to target families. That was all we got last year was families. Families of 3, families of 4, families of 6. I think the biggest we got was 2 families of 10. So you have to align your product, and then in the hard bit, align your marketing quickly to the new customer groups or customer profiles that you're targeting. And that's been a constant challenge for all businesses in this, because it constantly changes. As we're moving into this opening up, I made a wrong decision that I thought my customers this year would be the same as the customers last year, which were families again. What I've actually seen is the families are still coming, but we have the groups coming back now as well, much quicker than I thought they would come back. I mean, we have inquiries for 100, 150, 200. These people are planning ahead for these big groups when they can do it, and they're making judgments on the situation. So that's coming back much quicker, and we scaled our business and got our business in an operational fit state to deal with families, not these big groups. So it is a really challenge to make sure that you've got your product and your services and your experiences aligned to what is out there. But this comes back to one thing: who is your customer, and who is that customer, and how much do you understand about that customer?
Yeah, certainly is a challenge to be able to be nimble to change. It seems it's an ever-changing landscape, and a different customer, a different set of rules to follow, different restrictions. You touched, Peter, on there about those experiences, those meaningful experiences, and actually, Joan, I think up in Dornoch, you've done an incredible job of that, because you have people that become so connected to the place they end up moving there, retiring there.
Absolutely, yes. We've had families that have been coming for generations to Dornoch and often end up buying a house here. And they just do feel really connected, and they make sure they're here from our major events, well, when we're able to have such things. And I think, what they like is the fact that people take the time to talk to them. We have markets every fortnight in the summer. And a lot of that, whilst obviously you're there to sell whatever you've got, it's just actually engaging with the visitors, finding out where they're from, what they're doing. And they usually know, have you tried this walk or that shop or that cafe? And so really at that point, tourism is everybody's business. But it's just a natural interest in people. But this year, one of the things that came up from the various webinars we were watching in lockdown is the kind of authentic experience that people want to get. And our local museum ran a project, a longhouse project last year, looking at pre-clearance life. And they ran a number of workshops there about how you cook in those times, leatherware, silverware, and so on. And they were, oversubscribed with that. So that's something that they're looking at now to develop for visitors as well as locals, because it really was engaging, and you kind of understood how life was and got a better idea for that.
Mm-hmm. And have you made any other changes in terms of creating experiences that are very connected to the community, whether that's cultural, historical, like the ones you just mentioned there?
Well, we have, one of the things we started as a business group was to have a leaflet of all the events of the year. Clearly a bit difficult now, but we try to have a calendar event. So we start off in March with Fibrefest, which has been running 11 years. So that is nothing to do with Albran. It's to do with wool and sewing and so on. And we got 300 or 400 people coming in March, which if you thought about that, a few years ago, I thought, well, nobody will come in March, but they do come. And we have a classic car tour that happens in May. We have our Highland Games in the summer, our Sutherland Show, and at the end of the season we have a whisky festival. So more of these events that are also experiences, encourage people to come throughout the year. And Hogmanay, well, we used to have a street party. Goodness knows if that will come back. But that was one of the first things we did at the request of the hotels, was to extend that experience for visitors who we had a great street party, and then we all went and partied, and there was nothing happening on the first and the second. And we now have a 3-day programme, so we have a Looney Duke on the first, and people go in the sea, and we have a golf competition on the second. So it just makes it more of an experience for the visitor, and the experience is understanding who that visitor is and what they want to do is important.
Yeah, and you can see the real benefit of that as we look to extend the season. So important that businesses are able to trade as much as possible this year, partly to recoup costs, but also for the future of the industry as a whole. And the community working together is necessary. It would be impossible to create these sort of festivals and events without that collaboration. Joan, how would tourism businesses watching this just now, how would they go about creating a group like yours in their own community?
Well, I think if nothing exists, that they probably want to try and organise something that everybody's involved in, say a town tidy or something like that, because it's working together that builds those relationships. And then if there's a will, then you really need to have a big kind of workshop day or clear blue sky thinking with the post-its up on the wall of, what are our strengths and weaknesses, what are the opportunities and threats, and out of that get a kind of agreement of what are the priorities for our village, town, whatever, and take 3 of those and then try and get some funding for them. And it may well be that there are groups already in the town, the community council, a development trust, who would take the lead. And if not, then you start a group and start a constitution and get going yourselves. But there's a lot of benefit from doing that.
Well, tell us, just inspire us with some of the numbers that you achieved up there in Dornoch, the outcome that you had from initially from starting up the group.
Okay, so we had this website from the year 2000, and people used to pay £30 each for their advert. And when we were talking with High after their development plan, they put us in touch with Visit Arran. So we were taking £3,000 a year, and they basically said, well, you can't do anything with that. If businesses are going to benefit, if you're really going to have a marketing initiative, then the businesses have got to put their money where their mouths are, basically. And they asked for 0.3% of turnover. So we had a big meeting and we asked for that. And very grateful to Grant Sword of the Royal Golf Hotels. He said, well, I'll give you 0.6 in the first year. And after that, everybody else put their hand up. So we had 84 businesses signed up. We got £20,000 commitment within a month, which let us get Visit Scotland Growth Fund money and really kind of launched our dormant you can do all from here. And then we got signage on the A9, which has encouraged people to come off the North Coast 500 into Dornoch. So in 2015, through the visitor centre, we had 20,000 people 2019, we had 30,000. So it has made a difference, and it's attracted businesses here, and they've invested heavily in our architecture, the store buildings, and so on. So, actually, we had a lovely buzz about the place until last year when obviously COVID struck, and we just have to build up again now.
Yeah. And Peter, looking forward for the next 12 months and beyond, what should businesses be thinking about strategically about, I mean, it's difficult, as you say, when things keep changing, you're going to make mistakes, but what do you think they should be holding in their minds as the sort of most important point, in terms of that strategy?
Yeah, these are more tactical rather than strategic, but just coming back to some of the stuff John was saying there, the concept of time, 24 hours in a day, we noticed last year we had a lot of customers from the southeast of England. We did a lot of marketing in the London area who came up. These were people who would never come to Scotland before. They would have been in Turkey, they would have been on boats in Greece, they would have been in Portugal or somewhere. Their concept of time during the day wasn't aligned with the concept of time when the businesses were open in Scotland. So they were looking for us to sit down for an evening meal at 9:30, 10 o'clock. So you have to look at your business, what your timings you're opening. You're going to get an influx of people this time. None of the business has got any cash left. You've got an opportunity to get some cash back if you extend your opening hours. And if you want to manage what's coming, I suggest most businesses do extend their opening hours to be able to deal with what's coming. There's another not fallacy because it's factually true, but the Scottish tourism industry is worried because they have no international guests, and the international guests are the highest spenders. Well, that was data from 2019 previously, and it was correct. But it's not necessarily such a bad thing, because certainly what we found last year was the people coming up, certainly from the southeast of England, were exceeding the spend of international visitors, certainly managing it, matching it, and in many cases exceeding it. And why is that? A couple of reasons. One, they had a budget for travel that would have been much higher because they were going abroad and they didn't go abroad, and they were willing to commit that budget to a holiday in Scotland. So that's a huge opportunity. The other opportunity around that money is, currently in the UK, there's 189 billion of excess savings. We have never had as much money saved in the UK ever in our history. That is an awful lot of money sitting in people's bank accounts at the moment. COVID has been horrendous for a small part of the population. The vast majority of the population has made more money in COVID than they ever have because they've not been able to spend it, therefore it's amounted in their bank accounts. So we have a population that can't go anywhere who's sitting on excess money. That's the biggest opportunity tourism's ever seen.
And it is an opportunity, Peter and Joan, it is an opportunity to actually rethink how we do things and how we want the industry to look going forward. Peter, do you think this is a chance for us to actually make it work better for us, and especially in those rural communities?
It is, but we need to start taking tourism seriously. If you want it to be an industry, and the politicians and a lot of the leaders in tourism for years have blown smoke up the backside of tourism and the world-class tourism industry. We don't have world-class infrastructure in Scotland. We don't have third world infrastructure, but we certainly don't have world-class infrastructure. Can be that roads, be that airlines, be that airports, trains, certainly digital, broadband and mobile connections. If you're going to take an industry seriously, you have to create the environment where it can operate seriously. The tourism industry is probably sitting on it's had its biggest disaster. It's now sitting on its biggest opportunity to realign the product, the experience with a guest and actually create an industry that releases value. You got to mind, we've just left an industry that generated billions of turnover, but it didn't actually make that much profit in the scale of things. It was a survival-only industry, and we've seen it as we went into bad times. Businesses didn't have the reserves. Why didn't they have the reserves? Because they didn't make any money when the good times were here. Therefore, we have to realign the product and the value chain of tourism to make sure that businesses operating in tourism can pay their staff well, can train their staff, can invest in their businesses to keep them in a good way going forward. Easy to say, incredibly difficult when we're coming out of a situation where no one's got any money left and many have a debt mountain. But we have a unique brand. Scotland does have a brand that punches way above its weight and size globally. Other countries would kill for our brand. Therefore, it is a unique opportunity if we can align that brand with the trends of travel and tourism going forward and our environment. Now, we're a small country. We only have 5 million people, most of them in the Central Belt rather than the Highlands. So the Highlands needs to go and align itself with the environmental trends that are happening and make itself a renewable destination from an energy point of view, and across the whole of society living there. It could be, and everybody always says it makes Scotland world class this, world class that. You have to align with where you could actually objectively meet that, and it could be an environmental honeypot for the trend, and that is a fast growing trend across tourism world. We could get that right because we have the basic infrastructure, but it's got to take talent, time, money to do that. But we're never going to compete with normal tourism. Therefore, why don't we align for the tourism of the future?
So what would your message be then to the tourism businesses watching this? Would you appeal for them to do? Or to do the first thing is, and I come back to, you're only going to get the chance to deliver the experience on the ground if you connect with the customers in the first place, before they get anywhere near you. And tourism businesses in Scotland are absolutely fantastic at looking after customers when they have them. And that's not my opinion, that's data. You can get the data from TripAdvisor, and it scores all the restaurants, all the hotels and all the activity businesses globally. And Scotland scores right at the very top percentage of that. So we're great at looking after people when we have them. We're not so great at getting them in the first place or engaging with them in a digital manner in the way that they want to engage. It's not the way the business wants to engage, it's the way they want to engage. So we have to get a line of businesses in a digital manner to engage with the customer journey across their dreaming, their planning, their booking, their experiencing, and their sharing phase. At all points you touch the customer, you have to be aligned with what they're doing. We're pretty good at delivering the experiences when they're here. We need to put the same effort into when they're not here. Mm-hmm. Wise words there. And Joan, up there in Dornoch, what's your strategy? What are you looking at, bigger picture stuff for the slightly longer term over the next year and a half?
Well, I think it's really important that we get all year round tourism. Until we've got that, we don't have a career structure. We're not going to keep our young people. So that really is our focus, trying to build our autumn and winter marketing now so that people are starting to book that. And we get people coming all year round. I think that's the only way we're going to have a clear future.
Mm-hmm. And also, hopefully, those international guests will come back. You talk about the golf course there, which is absolutely beautiful. But maybe taking those people with those savings that Peter talks about, I haven't seen them in my bank account, but apparently they're there, and maybe taking that opportunity to create a whole new customer that will come year round.
Absolutely. And we did that last year. We did get these people, as you say, from the south of England, Peter, that do have that disposable income, and they are coming back. I mean, our problem, I suppose, right at the moment is that we have a lot of Americans who would be our normal visitors booked in for later in the summer, and we don't know, and they don't know what they're going to get. And if they don't get, have we got enough time to get somebody else in that window? And that's tricky. But I think on the whole, we may get a better balance, as Peter also indicated, so that some of those people from the south of England will still want to come to Scotland, as well as going on their European holidays when that's allowed again. And hopefully will come at different times of the year for different experiences if we can continue to engage with them digitally. And I think that's the important thing of keeping the social media going and tapping people on the shoulder every day and saying, this is what's happening up here when you're coming next.
Mm-hmm. And that community effort to working together to create those experiences, those events, those festivals that will keep them coming in the months that they traditionally perhaps wouldn't have. Well, it's time for us to wrap things up. Thank you so much to both of my guests today. There's lots of really interesting stuff there. Joan Bishop, you can check out visitdarnoch.com and see lots of the things that they're doing up there. And also Peter Syme, thank you, Peter, for joining us. You can visit his page, petersyme.com, and see what he's been up to too. And remember, you can catch up on any of the webinars that you've missed, or if you're short on time, we've got highlights packages which are available, which are under 15 minutes, which you can watch too. They're all on our YouTube channel, youtube.com/HIE Communications. And if you look for the Tune Into Tourism Road to Recovery playlist, you'll find them all there. Thank you very much for joining us. And for now, I've been Julia Sutherland. Goodbye.